Okay, so hi guys, welcome back once again. And today we're gonna talk about Neo Soul. So just kind of look into Neo Soul as an introduction. And this is gonna be part one of some videos that are gonna come after this video. And in this video, we're gonna kind of touch on 5 things to think about when approaching Neo Soul, as far as just playing is concerned, or just like designing the sonic atmosphere for Neo Soul, because I think that's where we maybe might get it lopsided, you know, by practicing a lot of just licks, a lot of progressions and stuff like that, without understanding the fundamental concepts that just make up the genre, or the soundscape. So we're going to focus briefly on those 5 points. And then on the next video, we're going to kind of go into in depth. The point is to kind of break everything by part so that you can better consume it and retain it for your performances. Okay. So point number 1, extensions. So remember in the previous videos, where we were breaking down 7th chords, where we talked about the major 7th chord, the minor 7th chord, dominant 7th chord, the augmented 7th chord, minor 7 flat 5 chord, and diminished 7th chord. We in Neo Soul, we find ourselves having to extend these chords, and by that I mean just adding tensions or color notes to make the harmony more denser, because that's just the style. Okay, that's the style of this. I'm sorry I have flu, guys, but we're gonna make it. Just to kind of highlight the style. It is made up of more extensions than basic 7th chords. So we find ourselves playing extensions, like extending to tension 9ths, or 11ths, with 9ths as well, and that's kind of like the sonic scape of this sound design, right? So you want to focus on extensions to start off with, especially with your minor 7th chords. For instance, in the key of C, you'd want to start now playing your extensions like minor 9ths, C minor 9ths, with the tensions as your melodies, hence called melodic tensions. Sometimes we do bury them inside the harmony using clusters, right? Semitone clusters. Just for a very kind of ambiguous sound, non-resolving, futuristic, flowing sound that is not so predictable, lush, for lack of a better term, right? So you want to learn your extensions and add very appropriate tensions that are available. I know sometimes we do get dissonant even in our minor chords, but basically, as a start, you want to just focus on the tensions that are available. For instance, on minor chords, you'll have tension 9 and tension 11 available together, even for your minor chords, and you can always spread it out. And how you do it is basic, right? So with a normal C minor 7 chord, to get a kind of 9th chord you just add tension 9, right? But what this does, like the previous breakdown videos, is every time we add a new note on top of our basic 7th chords, we create a 7th chord over the root by implication, right? So sometimes it's great to see minor 9th chords as just major 7th chords over roots to kind of give us those voicings, okay? You can further just break down those into triads by holding, obviously, the kind of bed of the chord and then isolating the triads that are buried inside this minor 9th chord. You can also play the G minor triad that is hiding inside this chord, right? Right. You just kind of play around with these tensions that are available. I'd suggest you study them, have a look at them, read about them, and then we'll kind of go in depth when we start improvising. Start improvising on top of progressions and stuff like that, right? So your extensions are very important, not just on minor chords, but also on major chords. So this happens as well when you add a 9th on top of a major 7th chord, in this case a C major 7th chord. By implication, you create a minor 7th over the root, right? So in this case, E minor 7th over C gives you C minor 9, right? And a bunch of other triads are now created, and the most important one that carries our tension 9 that we love so much would be G major, right? And that's what's very common in neo soul, is that these chords will be extended and kind of sprayed throughout the music to kind of color the music appropriately, right? And depending on the chord quality, the availability of tensions kind of widens, right? So you need to study chords and study tensions, melodic tensions that are available. This is kind of is kind of for intermediate players and kind of close to advanced players, where the assumption is that you already are practicing your scales and your chords and stuff like that, and we're just trying to put this together by genre, okay, or function, because not all of us are going to play gospel or jazz or whatever. Some of us are right in the middle, and neo soul is a very good middle ground between genres all around. Okay, so extensions would be your first thing, not only on major chords, not only on minor chords, but also on dominant chords. Normally when we play dominant chords, I'm using C as an example, when we play dominant chords in neo soul, we add more tensions. I think all of them obviously borrowed from the altered scale or 7th mode of the melodic minor mode, super Locrian. So your normal C Locrian scale with a flatted 4th degree is your super Locrian scale or altered scale that we use on dominant chords before we resolve to our one chords. Okay, so if I was playing a 2-5-1 in neo soul, firstly I'd start altering the chords before I get to my target minor 9th chord. I'd just, alter the chord tones, delay them, before they resolve, go to the 5 and play my altered sound, which is a normal C dominant 7 chord, just only with the flatted 5th sharp 9 and flat 9 added to the mix, right? All tensions available on a dominant chord. Okay, so I'd say practice that now, your melodic minor scales, melodic minor modes, and particularly your 7th, so your 7th kind of scale of the melodic minor mode, Super Locrian or altered, because you're going to use it a lot on your dominant chords, on your dense dominant chords that are going to go into your one resolutions. Okay, and then number 2 would be pedal points. All right, so in the very same sense, in the key of maybe F major, when playing a 1 chord or F major 7 chord, also extended with an added 9, right? Sometimes added 9 and a sharp 11, but that's just adding, stacking more triads that have these tensions available, right? It's just like an Easter egg hunt at this point. You have to find all of them in order to make use of all these colors. This is G major into C major, okay? And if you're playing for instance, what am I talking about? Pedal points. For instance, a 2-5-1 progression can be expressed over a single note. I've never done that. Okay, we can play our 2-5-1 progressions over the same pedal points, and how you kind of employ this technique is by thinking about common tones. So in our progressions, if we were to play a G minor 9 chord, we have F as our flatted 7th degree, which is part of our chord tones, very strong note. We have it in our G minor 9th chord or G minor 7th chord, so it wouldn't be wrong to keep the bass the same and play that chord on your right hand, implying a pedal point situation. Okay, and that's what gives this lovely stillness, but coupled with motion in neo soul. It's just like we're moving. The progression is moving, but we're not really moving because the bass part is sitting on one note and not moving like a traditional 2-5-1 note. Okay, so pedal points very quickly, and then we have dominant 7th chords that I did talk about, where we have more tense dominant chords. Okay, instead of your standard open dominant 7th chords. In neo soul, we tend to have more denser chords, obviously employed from either a diminished half, whole half, whole half, whole half, or either from your diminished scales right, from your diminished scales or your altered scales. Superlockian, seventh mode of the melodic minor. Your dominant chords are typically going to have those scales, okay, buried inside them, and those scales buried inside them, and those tensions buried inside them, or whole tone, or whole tone, because they carry so much tension, okay, going into your major chords. This is to create a very dense moment of tension that breaks apart when you resolve into your major chords or your minor, also extended minor chords. Okay, and what you want to also look at is your subdominant chords. So, for instance, in the key of F again, when we're playing our 2-5-1 progression, we can pivot from secondary dominant chords, not subdominant chords. We're going to talk about subdominant chords in a different video, but secondary dominant chords can be employed in your normal progressions. So in your 2-5-1 progression, you can proceed your first minor chord from a relating 5 chord that resolves into that minor chord. Right? What happens though is that the normal chord qualities that are found inside the scale change into secondary dominant chords, which are dominant chords that have diatonic roots, right, and can be created at any point of the scale in order to help us resolve, to diatonic targets. This is just for interest. For instance, when you go to a 2, you'd come from a 6 dominant. When you come to a 3, you'd come from a 7, kind of 7 dominant going into 3 minor, right? 6 dominant going into 2 minor, going into 5, going into 1 or 2, going into sharp 1, which comes from your kind of Lydian modes. Okay, Lydian scale. So we know that major 7 chords that are outside the key take Lydian. I don't know, they just sound nice and open for neo-soul. Okay, but that's purely also subjective. All right, but you want to practice a lot of secondary dominant chords going into diatonic resolutions just for interest. This changes the original kind of well-known chords we have. So for instance, going into a 3 minor chord, when we have our 6 as our target, we'd rather play like a 3 altered chord into the 6, also coloring the 6 with tension, also making that dominant, turning it into a secondary dominant chord, into our 2 minor chord, into a 5 chord, into maybe sharp 1, major 7 chord, into 1. So a lot of delayed resolutions, a lot of flavor, a lot of vibes, a lot of chords, a lot of substitutions. But typically, for number one, for instance, I said focus on chord extensions. So all the chords you have, the basic chords, basic seventh chords you have, you're going to just start adding tensions and filling up your hands with more and more notes to color the chords, because it's a very rich sound. And then you're going to play around with pedal points in order to have very consistent voice leading. When you play, instead of a very jumpy bass part or stuff like that. And then you're going to check out your dominant chords, dominant seventh chords, dominant seventh chords with a lot of tensions, or all the tensions. So particularly study your altered scales, or those of the melodic minor, especially the superglockian. And then lastly, your basic scales, for instance, on minor chords, you want to just focus on normal pentatonic scales. A nice pentatonic scale to play over the major chord is the pentatonic of the 5, because it has tension 9 inside it, and kind of 13 and 7 inside, right? So in any situation, really, even when you're in C major playing the pentatonic of the 5th G major pentatonic gives it more flavor because of the notes that are stressed, that are flavorful for this genre. Okay, so your major pentatonics and your minor pentatonics for now, right? Minor pentatonics, your minor patterns, pentatonic patterns as well. All your licks and drills we're gonna need for this for the next video when we start going into progressions. All right. So think about your basic pentatonic scales for now, and then your altered scales. So you already know in a normal 2-5-1 scale, so you can just play the pentatonic of the root of the one when you're playing the 2 chord, right? Or I don't really like the G minor pentatonic. G minor pentatonic because it emphasizes a very Aeolian sound, and I'm kind of looking for a Dorian sound. Okay, so your scale choices also play a very important role as far as taste is concerned, because there's no specific scale to play. Although there are common examples, you know, there's no specific direction to take, because neo soul is neo soul music. So what you feel is soulful, okay? But typically, you want to kind of stay in that pentatonic margin with this genre as an introduction. Okay, so just your altered scales and your pentatonic scales for now, and check out your extensions, check out your pedal points, your dominant chords, your dissonant dominant chords with all your tensions and stuff like that. And then in the next video, we're gonna look at clusters, kind of look at diminished walk cups and stuff like that, drills, common progressions. For instance, like minor chords going into major chords, a semitone below. So in any minor chord situation, you could just play the major 7 chord or semitone below. In any minor chord, you play F minor into E major, E minor, E flat minor 11 into D, D major, D minor, guess what? Into C sharp. C sharp major 7 with a sharp 11, okay? Alright. See you in the next video. This was a very quick video, but I hope we can just focus on those 5 points for this genre, and then we'll kind of take it from there. Cheers, thank you.